I'm delighted to talk about this new book, My Journey with Maya, in part because I regard her as the quintessential, the ultimate Renaissance woman in American history. Who else has done more and done more well? Poet, author, professor, lyricist, dancer, choreographer, actor, director. I mean, before she showed up in '93 to give the inaugural poem at Clinton's ceremony, the only person to have done that was a guy named Robert Frost. So she's the first woman, the first African American to ever deliver this poem at a presidential inauguration. So she's, I think, the ultimate Renaissance woman in American history. I had no idea when I met her as a 21-year-old kid that I would be able to forge a friendship with her, courtesy of being invited to go to Africa with her for 2 weeks. All I did was carry her bags, basically. But those 2 weeks in Ghana, West Africa, allowed me to get to know her, to listen, to laugh, to learn, to love on her, to be loved on by her. And for 28 years, that friendship just blossomed until she passed away last year. But for a young black kid to be pulled into that kind of environment by someone of her stature was not just life-affirming, but life-altering.
You weren't pulled out of nowhere. You were working for Tom Bradley.
That's right. I was working for Tom Bradley at the time, 21 years of age. Got a chance to meet her because I was presenting a letter of welcome to her on behalf of the mayor one day when he couldn't make this appointment. So I was in her presence for only 5 minutes, maybe less than, but it was so palpable, the power. Her presence was just so rich. And I said to myself, at some point, I got to make my way back to her space. I want to get to know her. I had no idea that a few years later I would have run for city council in this city and lost. And I didn't just lose the race, I lost myself. Public service is the only thing I'd ever wanted to do. And it seems laughable now at 50 to think that my life was over at 25 or 26. But when you fail at the only thing you think you were born to do, something takes leave of you. I didn't have a plan B or plan C. I couldn't find my voice. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know my place in the world. And in that very moment comes this invitation to go to Africa with Maya for 2 weeks. So if anybody can help you figure out how to find your voice and what your place in the world is and that you matter, Maya can do that. And she was able to do that for not just me, but a lot of other people, because at the age of 7, of course, she's raped. And for 5.5 years, she doesn't say a single word. She's mute for 5.5 years. So again, if anybody can talk about how to find your voice, how to fight and claw your way back, how to find your place in the world, Maya could do that. And she did it for me and countless others over the course of her life.
And of course, you weren't just going anywhere with her.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You weren't going to Paris.
That's
or
right.
London. You're going to Africa.
Yeah.
You're going to Ghana. This is complicated feelings.
Yeah, I mean, this trip for me to Africa, again, was life-affirming and life-altering, primarily because I'm a young black man, obviously, trying to find my place in the world, trying to find my voice. Who am I? What is my identity? How do I claim my name from the lost and found? How do I do that? And so I'm leaving the country for the very first time. I've never been out of the States. Leaving the country for the first time, young black man. Going to Africa for the first time, young black man. Going to Africa with Maya Angelou, young black man. We get there, the president of Ghana greets us. I never thought about the fact that black countries have black presidents. But here I am meeting, long before Barack Obama, meeting the president of a country. And if that wasn't enough, there were some other dignitaries who were there because they wanted to hear Maya give this speech that she had returned to Ghana to give. She lived in Ghana earlier in her life, but now she's coming back. They're rolling out the red carpet. She's giving a major address at the Du Bois Institute, as in W.E.B. Du Bois. And the institute is on the grounds of the house, the estate where he lived in Ghana. So I'm going to Du Bois' house, and everybody wants to come hear Maya give this speech. So Stokely Carmichael shows up. Miriam Makeba shows up. The great black historian John Henry Clark shows up. I'm in the midst of all of this at Du Bois' house with the president of the country here, and Maya giving this speech, and I'm just walking behind her carrying bags, basically. As I sit listening to them talk about the past and their relationship and their friendship over the years, Maya becomes a cosmic connection for me to all the people who I wish I had known. Malcolm and Martin and Mandela and Nina Simone and the list, and James Baldwin, her friend Jimmy. I mean, she's my cosmic connection to all these people I wish I had known. It was just an experience that, even though I've written a book about, I still don't have a language to fully describe how that felt, being a young black kid, being embraced in that way.
The rest of Ghana, are you seeing African
Oh, yeah.
life?
Yeah.
And how is that striking?
So I've never left the country before in my life. So I'm going to Ghana for the first time, going to Africa for the first time, obviously. I didn't know what to expect when I went to Africa, but getting out amongst those villagers and seeing and meeting these tribal elders and meeting kings and queens in these villages. I mean, this was the stuff, again, that I'd read about in my history books, had been taught at Indiana University in my African American Studies courses. But to see this life, this story come to life for me. And I never forget just being tickled at the clothes that some of these Africans were wearing. I don't know if I expected from Tarzan loincloths, but they were wearing Nike shirts and drinking Coca-Cola and eating McDonald's. And it was just amazing to me how Americanized in some ways the continent was. And yet, that's not what I wanted. What I wanted was, again, to listen to their music, not to hear more Michael Jackson. I love Michael Jackson, but I wanted to hear their music. I wanted to see their dances. I wanted to eat their food. I wanted to hear them speak in their language. I wanted to experience what life was like for them. Over the years, I've come to appreciate that for all of us who live in the diaspora, there are lessons to be learned from both sides. There are lessons for Africans to learn from us as African Americans, and lessons for us African Americans to learn from Africans. And so in the work that I've tried to do over the years, I try to find these spaces and places where we can bridge those gaps between Africans and African Americans.
I thought maybe we could end with that moment that you described so beautifully of her starting to speak at the event. And,
Yeah. So we're in Ghana for almost 2 weeks. Maya has given a number of lectures, and we've had all these other events on a very busy schedule. And finally, we built up to the seminal reason for this trip, her lecture at the Du Bois Institute. And what I can remember, and will always remember for as long as I live, is the refrain that she used repeatedly that day. And she essentially built her speech, almost an hour lecture. She built her speech around this notion. And speaking, as you can imagine, to an audience full of Africans and African Americans, this thing resonated viscerally with all of us. And there were tears in the eyes of so many people, including yours truly, sitting in the audience. And her refrain that day was, around which she built this talk, we have already been paid for. We've already been paid for. The blood, the sweat, the tears, the service, the sacrifice, the struggle, the millions of dead bodies at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean that didn't make it through the Middle Passage, we have already been paid for. Now imagine, she's looking into the audience at a 20-something-year-old kid who's trying to find his voice, trying to find his way in the world. What is my place? What is my role? Why am I here? And she's saying to me and everybody else in that audience that we've already been paid for. Now, because we've been paid for, there is a debt that we owe. We will never be able to repay this debt, but we owe a debt. And we must use the gift and the skill and the talent that we have, whatever it might be, in love and service to others to make a down payment on that debt that we can never fully repay. But you, young Tavis, have already been paid for. And that thing hit me so viscerally that someone has already made, have made Herculean sacrifices for me just to be here. I owe a debt that I can never repay, but I've got to use whatever talent I have. I've got to find my voice. And then Maya said to me before we left Africa to come back to the States, she went one way, I went the other way. The last thing she said to me was, when I was hoping that she just, the wise one would give me the answer to how this is all going to work out and tell me when, where, and how I was going to find my voice and make my way and how my career was going to turn out. And when I discover who I really am, I wanted her to give me a simple answer. And Maya looked me in the eye and she said to me, we find our path by walking it. We find our path by walking it. And then she said to me, when she learned that I had lost this city council race just before going to Africa, and that's why I was sort of lost, didn't know what the next step was. She said, baby, sometimes rejection is redirection. Sometimes rejection is redirection. That thing that you think you were rejected for, maybe that's redirection. And then it hit me. Well, maybe my job isn't to be on the city council. Maybe there's a bigger role, another role for me to play. And here I am, all these years later, talking to you.